Well, hello there, and welcome to Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cook. On this week's show, we're going around the Richmond Council table as we review several items from the latest Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Municipal Council. One of these stories is going to take us around the world on this week's Roundtable as Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette recaps her participation in the WindEurope 2023 conference that took place in late April in Copenhagen, Denmark. You'll also hear Warden Mombourquette talk about Richmond County's participation in the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Spring Conference. And we're going to have an update for you on the funding proposal being put forward from the Kingston Memorial Centre in Lordways. And later on in the program, you're going to hear a new active living strategy that's coming together for Richmond County. But we begin with an update on a story we brought you recently on Roundtable. Specifically, can the sidewalk network through Arichat be extended from Highway 206, or the High Road, up the hill past the Richmond Municipal Building to end up at Beau-Port, including some new entrance and exit points? Because the cost of the project had recently been spiraling from an early estimate of $155,000 to a current cost estimate of $277,000, it looked like the project could be shelved for the coming year. However, there is now a possibility that the update to the sidewalk network in Arichat could actually happen during the calendar year 2023. Here's some footage from the latest Committee of the Whole meeting of Richmond Municipal Council discussing this issue. You're going to hear from Richmond Public Works Director Chris Boudreau and District 1 Councillor Sean Sampson in a moment. First of all, to tee things up, here is Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette.
We do have one item on the sidewalk project. So over to you, Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, thanks, Warden Mombourquette. So just a follow-up from our last meeting when it come to the sidewalk project here for going up to the school. Spoke to many staff members of Beau-Port and also spoke to one of the operation managers, who I think you spoke to as well, Chris, saying that there wasn't too much in their operation budget, on their end when it came to funding our request. But just wondering if we could look, Chris, if we could look at putting a motion forward tonight to see if we could reach out to our tender, our company contractors that tendered out before May 6th. Wondering if we can get some sort of extension there in good faith, or if they could honor
the bids.
That bid. I can't see too much changing, from now till our budget deliberations are done, right? So just, if you could reach out to those contractors to see if they could honor that bid and give us time to go to our budget deliberations just to see, where that goes going forward, right? See if we can get this project done this year.
Sure. Which would you guys want
Leave
to
it with
confirm
us.
on that?
Yeah, leave it with us, please.
Yeah.
We'll look into it,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Because we have options for you guys to consider under budget as well, so
Okay.
but by all means.
And now we'd like to present one of the two formal gallery presentations that took place at the latest Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Council. This one comes from two representatives of the Dr. William B. Kingston Memorial Health Centre in Lordways, specifically the chair of the board for the Health Centre, Juanita Mombourquette, and the centre's managing director, Sherry Sampson. They appeared before the Committee of the Whole meeting of May the 8th to ask Richmond to consider continuing its funding for the centre to be able to continue its operations. So here is Juanita Mombourquette and Sherry Sampson making their pitch at the Committee of the Whole meeting that took place at the Richmond Municipal Building in Arichat on May the 8th.
Sherry and I are here just to give you an update about what we're doing at the Dr. Kingston Memorial Community Health Centre. We want to thank you, the Richmond Council, for the donation last year that helped support our work at the health centre. We are asking for a donation again this year, but we wanted to give you a little bit of update on some of the stuff that we do at the health centre and some of the stuff that this donation would support. So it's just brief, but we'll give you a little intro. Our request is funding support for Dr. Kingston Memorial Community Health Centre. This is the type of information we're going to walk through today. Our vision at the Dr. Kingston the Dr. K, as I like to call it, is healthy people and healthy communities. So we're trying to get to the root of health. So we have not only our primary care people at the health center, but we also have community-based programs that we try to provide to help address some of the social determinants of health that affect our area, including social isolation, poverty, food and housing insecurity. We try to do that by offering programs and services that support mental, physical, emotional, and social well-being, which is a big task. So I wanted to give you kind of an idea of the types of people that are in the health center providing some of these services. So we have our medical receptionists who, they're the people that take the calls, that set the appointments up. They'll, if you have a follow-on procedure or blood work or something like that, they'll set that up. So they take a lot of the administration and make it all work, which is no small task. And they always have a smile in their voice. So these people are crucial to the operation of that health center. Sherry, our managing director, is also very crucial to that organization, keeps all the bills paid and the people coming in and out. And not only her regular day-to-day duties did she perform last year, but she also is administrating for, like she comes to our board meetings, it's in the evening. She's an administrator for the Nova Scotia Association of Community Health Centres. That's a big one to say. And she's also the administrator for the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health. So she's doing a lot of other things as well. And last year, she went the extra mile with a whole bunch of support, a whole bunch of people, but Sherry organized 2 fundraisers last year that helped get us into the black last year. So she goes the extra mile. We have a nurse practitioner who is located in our location. She is doing normal patient load at the health center, but she's also now doing some of the virtual care for people who don't have a family physician or nurse practitioner. So she's offering that part of that service for Nova Scotia Health. And one of these calls for the people who don't have, for the virtual care for the people who don't have a physician or a nurse practitioner, the person got on the call with a nurse practitioner and she said it was the best doctor's appointment I've ever had. She had, talked about all the things, and she said the nurse practitioner asked her, how's your home life? How's your, are you stable? Do you have, she asked her questions more about the social determinants of health, not just about the particular problem that she had called in about. So she got her prescriptions renewed, she got appointments with a specialist, she had some other ideas about how to look into some of the things she could have done. So it's a fabulous service. She was very, very happy. We have a family practice nurse who works out of the health center, and this health center, with all these resources, is a collaborative center, which means that the physician can get the family practice nurse to do shots if there's someone that needs to get shots, or the nurse practitioner can say, hey, can you help me with this? So they can share the support of all of the people, all the patients that come in. And our family practice nurse was talking about the environment at the health center and how positive it was, and how much they like working there, and that a positive environment to work leads to positive outcomes, which is awesome. Good. And we have physicians. Currently, we have 2. As I mentioned, they are a collaborative practice that they're working out of with the nurse practitioner, the family practice nurse. And when they are working together, that just provides a better option for everybody who comes to the health center for help. And the Dr. Kingston, the Dr. K, is a turnkey for physicians and for the nurse practitioners. For everybody, they can walk in and start practicing. Sherry and her team provide all the administrative support and location and cleaning services, etc. So it's a very nice option for folks. So that was the primary healthcare side. We also have the community-based programming side, and one of our key players is the senior safety coordinator. And what I've got here is some of the comments that Michelle McVie has gotten for some of the work that she's done over the last little while. Fair to say that the senior safety coordinator was and continues to be a pivotal person in the social fabric of Richmond County. Her position is essential. One of these incredibly helpful people who I'm sure everybody, if you've met Michelle, you know what she's like. They were able to get a heat pump, when they were trying to work with burning wood, when they were still having some health issues. It was just a wonderful service that Michelle provides. Another example was dealing with social isolation for some seniors. There was an iPad connectivity project. So they took, I don't know how many iPads they had, but they brought them out to seniors and they helped them start to interact with some of their family that was out of town. And they, this particular person was, in a bad way and really found that this program was amazing and helped give a positive spin, which I thought was great. Some more senior safety coordinator programs. There was a food preservation workshop to help with food insecurity issues. Some of the programming that was taught was for helping volunteers learn how to reach out to seniors. And then there was a musical care training for volunteers. So these aren't what you typically think of with primary care, but it's that community-based social determinants of health care that the community-based programming is looking to address. As well this year, the senior safety coordinator, who is also a yoga instructor, took training on trauma-informed yoga. And so she put on a proof of concept kind of trial yoga program. I forget how many weeks, like 6 or 8 weeks, and people were invited to come and experience yoga, trauma-informed yoga, which she said she feels like it went really well. So kind of cool to start to add in a few more interesting and different programs. The Dr. K also works with a network of other organizations to try to address these social determinants of health, like the River Roots Market Garden. They have, it's in Richmond, River Bourgeois, and they have greenhouses and gardens, gardeners, healthy produce, cooking lessons, meals with friends, education, in an attempt to work towards food security. So the Dr. K is part of that in that network. So these are just examples of the types of things that this health center does. And you might think of the primary care but not know about some of the other stuff. You might know some of the other stuff but not know all the different resources. So we wanted to bring some of these stories to you. So as you also know, we're not for profit, and we every year work very hard to secure funding to support operations. We seek every year, we seek funding from federal options, from provincial options, from the municipality. We are also, I think our contract is up in September or October, August, with NSH, so we'll be looking at whether we can include a rent increase in that contract. We're also, last year we had a couple of more fundraising events and they were successful, so I think we'll probably do 1 or 2 of those again. I think we're planning to, but we'll see.
No small task to lift.
I'm not gonna. Sherry, what do you think? So, and this is a brief look, very brief look at our financials from last year. So last year we had extra funds, donations from the municipality, the province. We had 2 successful fundraisers, and we had donations coming in from the communities. In total, our operational balance for the year, we were actually in the black. Yay! $6,712, which is good because in January we were back in the red. So this was useful to allow us to survive January and February and March. So that was good last year. This year, I'm the next one, right? This year, so far as of the end of March, we're $15,000 in the hole. So it was a good thing we had that $6,000. Part of the reason for the $15,000 or almost $16,000 is that one of our 2 physicians is away January, February, and March, so we didn't have the rent from that particular physician. Now, the same thing happened last year, but it was not quite as much of a deficit last year because there are the costs increased this year. So it was a little bit higher this year that we have a deficit compared to last year. But a lot of it was physician away and then extra costs. So last year we got $5,000 from the Richmond County, which really helped. I know that's what we have thought about for this year. We are asking you to consider increasing that for us due to the rising costs and the cost of living increases that we're experiencing. We also want to continue improving the employment compensation package for our employees. We want to make it the best possible job that we can for our staff to retain them, but also to give them a living the ability to live and to retire maybe eventually. So we want to improve that, and then. Of course, because we have the operational expenses, we have to pay the light and heats even when the physicians are not there. So we do end up having very little cushion to handle that lost revenue. So, and that's it. So that's our request. We are happy with whatever you can give us, but we would ask you to consider if there's an amount you could give more.
All right, any questions for Juanita or Sherry? I mean, typically we would have this conversation at our budget deliberations.
Yes.
I anticipate that that's where we will have it again, so.
That's perfectly
Yeah,
understood.
so
Yeah.
just so you're aware of that. And any questions for Juanita or Sherry?
I mean, my questions could probably be answered like through an email as we do budget deliberations. Like you just mentioned, the idea that the contract with NSH expires in August, and I would be wondering if you've had preliminary discussions with them and sort of where that seems to be heading.
Well, we're working up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention that Friday last week, we met with our MP, Mike Kellaway, to talk about what possible funding they have, because they have both given money to the province and they also have a mental health budget. So we're working with Mike Kellaway to see if there's anything, any way, especially because we would like to address some more of the mental health issues. So, and that's a good pot of money. So we're starting to draft a one-pager of who we are and what we do and why we need their money. And we also, on Friday, this week, we have a meeting with our MLA, Trevor, to talk about what the province might be able to do. And we've been working all of these conversations for a number of years. And what our real goal is to get operational funding.
Right.
Not from Richmond County, but from a source that is a long-term sustainable source, so that we can go on and introduce more of these programs that address the needs of the community. So that's our ultimate goal, but as we work towards that ultimate goal, we have to still pay the bills.
The only other thing I would maybe add is, I guess, important to note that I know certainly Michelle's caseload extends all over Richmond County and probably beyond even.
Yes,
It's quite a caseload that she's got there, and I know I certainly have referred people from all over the county to her, and appreciate that support. I would assume, the other healthcare providers in the facility are in a similar situation. They kind of folks from everywhere coming in, like all around the county
Yes.
to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just something for us to keep in mind as we kind of move into budget deliberations, and that's going to begin, I think, next week or this week or. Like
And any
tomorrow.
questions, just send them to
Yeah,
one of
for
the
sure.
two of us. Yeah.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette was one of 3 straight area representatives that participated in the WindEurope 2023 conference in Copenhagen, Denmark. The April event saw Mombourquette attend with Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. The two are co-chairs of the Straight Area Offshore Wind Task Force. Also in attendance was Martin Thompson, the Innovations and Economic Development Director for Richmond County and Port Hawkesbury on behalf of the Cape Breton Partnership. Warden Mombourquette gave a recap of the Straight Area's participation in this international conference at the latest Committee of the Whole meeting of Richmond Municipal Council. Here's what the warden had to say about her trip to Europe.
So this was the opportunity that the province of Nova Scotia invited members of the Strait of Canso Offshore Wind Task Force to participate in, and was really happy to do that at a conference called WindEurope in 2023 to learn about the Danish kind of experience, but also the work that's happening in the North Sea around wind and sustainable energy in general. So could I get you to advance the slide? So just a little bit about the organization. It's an association that promotes the use of wind power generally, whether it's onshore or floating. There were a little over 14,000 attendees and over 500 exhibitors at this event. So it was a pretty intensive learning opportunity. And you'll note some of the content that was included here around supply chains, permitting, grids, sustainability, resource assessment, engagement with communities, which is, of course, something the task force has been big on, et cetera. So could you advance the slide? So day one from the Danish Energy Agency, we spent an entire day there and had 6 or 7 presentations from different areas of their of work that they are doing with regards to grid sustainability or grid access, with regards to maximizing sustainability, ensuring a circular economy, recycling, etc. So it was an intense day, really policy focused. Kind of concluded with a bit of a presentation from a company called RWE, which was really focused on sustainability and engagement. What we learned about the Danish experience is that they're really focused now, because they've got a 30-year history in this sector. They're really focused now on that sustainability piece and understanding now, because some of their structures are reaching the end of their life, and so they're really like looking at blade recycling technologies and different things like that, and maximizing, maximizing efficiency while minimizing the footprint of some of these structures as well. I also brought back some information related to some of the education that they're doing with regards to preparing the workforce of the future, so I'll have some of that to share with you as well. The first day of the conference, the actual conference itself, was really focused on how the work that they've done to strengthen their supply chain, which are all the businesses that would contribute to sustainable energy. So if you think about, electrical companies, and you think about, metal fabrication and that kind of thing, these are key pieces. They talked a lot about decarbonizing industry and transport with wind, and really, if you think about those hard to decarbonize sectors such as aviation or deep sea marine, we need to come up with some innovative solutions on how to make sure that we can decarbonize those sectors as well. Up on the top right is, I found a Canadian at the conference, so I made sure to get a picture of her. So the folks on the top right that you're seeing on your slide here are with a company called the Renewable Construction Academy. And so they have developed content that, when I look at it, looks like it could really plug in well to some of the post-secondary content that we have now to kind of inform people about a future in sustainable energy.
So Warden, you had referenced
Yeah.
micro-credentials there, and is that
Yes.
what they're doing there, is some
So
micro-credentials?
that company in particular I would say they would, it's almost like they have developed interactive online self-directed tools that could plug into micro-credentials, right? So, yeah, really great. So if you think about some of the core programming, sorry, we're on an education rant here, but if you think about some of the core programming, you know, in the trades that we have now, how do we customize those for a workforce in sustainable energy? By plugging that kind of content in. It was a pretty exciting presentation. The bottom left corner is a photo of the Canadian ambassador to Denmark, who you can't see behind the picture is the trade commissioner as well, who were supporting the Nova Scotia reception. And the picture you see in the middle here is Sandra Farwell, who was with the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, who was presenting the hydrogen roadmap, the Nova Scotia hydrogen roadmap at the event. Lots of sessions focused on carbon footprint, blade recycling, efficiency. On the top right corner, the picture in the top right is a panel event that I took in, which was extra to the conference, focused on some of those sustainable solutions and collaboration, a lot of learning around how, when industries collaborate, that kind of thing. And that was hosted by Aegir Insights, which is Scott Urquhart's firm, who has been, I think, a key player in advising government and certainly the task force on, on the way forward. And a good Richmond County fella. So hopefully one day we will attract him back home. The photo you see on the bottom right, this is a photo of my new friend Nils, who works with DOB Academy, and again, very much an education-focused conversation. I built that little windmill there in the middle. It's spinning so fast you can't see the blades, but but it was a really interesting conversation because not only are they doing hydrogen, some of the first hydrogen training development in the world, they are also working right now on a project in Newfoundland on community engagement. So doing public education and public engagement as well, which I thought was really interesting because I think it's an excellent model we could be looking at. Mm-hmm. And then what you can't see behind this picture in the very middle is a photo of a traditional Danish meal, it was a beef sort of dinner that is served in a communal style and reminded me a whole lot of how we eat here in our Acadian culture in particular. So that one was close to my heart, but you couldn't enjoy the taste or the picture even in this case. But I'm going to figure out how to make that gravy that they had, and I'll let you know. But this is part of our delegation. Of course, you'll see CEO of the Cape Breton Partnership here, Tyler Mathis, was with us, as well as Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton from Port Hawkesbury. Other members of the delegation included our Development Officer, Martin Thompson, as well as some folks from the province. The third day of the conference was really, again, talking about a lot of talk about biodiversity and sustainability, and looking at ways to, specifically the North Sea is looking at a project to try to restore the biodiversity of the oysters in the North Sea. There's a particular species of oyster that was very prevalent there many, many years ago and had declined, I think, for a variety of reasons. And they're looking now at specific ways of seeding these oysters and increasing that biodiversity back and using the turbines to do that. So I thought that was really interesting information. And I will just draw your attention to the photo on the far right to give you a sense of the scale of this trade show. That's a 2-story GE trade show booth with meeting rooms and stand. Like, this is, it's a pretty, reminded me a lot of the old OTAN's conference for oil and gas, but cleaner. So again, on the left-hand side, you'll see some slides there related to foraging and avoidance. So a lot of study going on into the impact to bird communities and some of the results from that. And then in the middle is a picture of myself, Mayor Brenda, and our development officer, Martin. So for those of you who haven't met him yet, Martin is above Brenda on the right-hand side there, and Andy Overton, who is with ORE Catapult, based in the UK, which is an interesting research and learning model that we're looking at trying to bring to this region in terms, so we can retain as much of the intellectual property and the as possible in our communities. So. Next on the slideshow is just some pictures from a tour of the Port of Esbjerg. I'm probably not saying that right, and Martin's not here to correct me, so my apologies for that. But you can see an example on the right-hand side of the design of the crew transfer vessels that that they've been evolving over time. On the left-hand side, we've got the CEO from the Port of Esbjerg providing us with some information on how important it was to develop the supply chain. What I really want to draw your attention to, though, is the picture in the middle. And again, when we talk about supply chain, if you look at these nacelles, so each of these are nacelles. I think they're Siemens nacelles, and you look at what's holding those up. So a local metal fabrication company created the design to create a stand for each one of those nacelles, and that has since become like big business for that metal fabrication company. So when you think about all of the pieces that are required to support an industry like this, it's a great example of the things you just wouldn't think of immediately, right? So if you could advance the slide. Just some key takeaways were related to education and research, workforce development, that biodiversity and the circular and sustainable economies, that the need for additional port infrastructure. We know that we have a gem of a port here, and I have provided you all with the glossy of the Point Tupper prospectus, which gives you some really great information about how Point Tupper can help us connect to the global economy. And of course, a big theme around collaboration, that innovation and wind in particular is powering the fourth industrial revolution. And of course, supply chain benefit and benefits optimization. And I've put benefits optimization in bold there because, the point that we have been making with the province and that we'll continue to make is that where this work happens and where this effort is being put in is where the benefits should also be realized. So that's why such a focus on the task force and on that local supply chain piece. And on the right-hand side is a Lego replica, because I think Lego might have been invented in Denmark. So that's just a quick replica of an offshore wind kind of design kind of thing. So, and then the next slide really is basically just summing up that 30-year commitment that Europe has made to a sustainable energy resource has resulted in the advancement of technologies and processes that have improved our environmental and our climate outcomes, but have also driven down the levelized cost of energy. I think Nova Scotia's opportunity is to leverage that experience, adopt those best practices. We don't need to start from scratch, and so that we can leapfrog ahead. But certainly a lot more work to do on, I always say the devil is in the details, and we need to do a lot more community engagement. But in terms of a learning journey, it was extremely valuable, and I think gave us all some food for thought about making sure that we're all talking the same language when we're talking about this, and that we even talked about perhaps one of the things the task force could do is to maybe do a bit of a stakeholder map, or maybe that's through this municipal council, so that folks, who are not in it every day, the way we are, understand there's, a couple of hydrogen developers, the Nova Scotia Power's role. So just kind of mapping that out a little bit for people so that it becomes a little bit easier to digest, because there's a lot of information and unfortunately a lot of misinformation floating around as well.
Was there any kind of interest from the province in terms of, the port infrastructure? So I know that was one of the areas that when I read it was most concerning to me, right, is that as a province that's the piece that we have these great ports, but the infrastructure to support the industry is not there.
Yeah.
So I would hope that the folks from the province really pay close attention to that.
Yeah, and they definitely did. And what they have plans for is a bit of an assessment across the Atlantic, actually, to look at the ports and the infrastructure that we have now and what might be needed to move us into the future. But again, our point is that
We have a lot of positives to our port to
the
start.
Strait of Canso has, is the deepest ice-free, dredge-free port
Yeah.
on the sea, basically on the seaboard here that has access to the assets of land. And so we're making our case pretty strongly. Yeah. It was a great opportunity, and I do want to thank council for supporting it. And I think it meant, when we're evaluating whether or not we participate in these things, we also have to think about the cost of not going.
That's right.
Right? And what is the information that we can bring back to our communities and et cetera, right? So.
Well, we have to look at honestly, we have to look at the stake, I guess. We're a key player right in the middle of multi-million dollar industries.
Yeah.
So why not going would have definitely hurt us.
Yeah.
And stay tuned to this episode of Roundtable as Warden Mombourquette gives a recap of Richmond County's participation in the latest Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Spring Conference in Digby. But right now, let's shift our focus to active living in Richmond County. The municipality has commissioned HRM-based Upland Consulting to develop a new active living strategy for the county. And a gallery presentation from two Upland representatives on May the 8th for Richmond's Committee of the Whole gave a recap of what's going into this strategy and when we can hope to see it developed for the future. So, here is Max Chauvin and Karen McTavish from Upland Consulting appearing via Zoom at the Richmond Municipal Council Committee of the Whole meeting on May the 8th.
The strategy and plan is indeed a roadmap or a framework with a 10-year horizon. So some of you may feel there's an abundance of recommendations, but as I said, there is a 10-year window in which to accomplish the recommendations. Next slide. By way of plan development, it was in 3 phases. We started with the discovery, where we did an analysis of community assets. We looked at your documents, your programs, your policies, your stats, demographics, trends in Richmond. In January and February, we started the community consultation, and we heard from over 200 people in the public surveys. There was 100 individual interactions on the online map, the interactive map. We had 21 interviews and consultations with community groups. We spoke with sport groups, with Olotech, with some folks from the different aspects of the school system, Dundee, and the Recreation Advisory Committee, and some staff. So we compiled and correlated that data along with the discovery and analysis and came up with the recommendations for the plan, which was submitted in April. I'm going to start by talking about the vision, mission, and guiding principles, and then I'll hand it over to Max. So with respect to the vision is intended to reflect that 10-year horizon. It's meant to be inspirational, something that the community can buy into, staff and council. I think it speaks to the uniqueness of Richmond. Some of the phrases that jump out are that Richmond is flourishing, it has outstanding experiences, and that there's diverse and all-encompassing opportunities with respect to active living, creative enrichment, and community vitality. The mission is more on the ground. It lays the foundation, so to speak, the here and now and how you can your business. And it speaks to the support, guidance, and leadership that staff provide in the delivery of services, and that you engage with citizens groups, councils, and other departments so that all citizens can participate in activities. With respect to the guiding principles, they're meant to be more of the underpinnings or the philosophy behind how you operate. When the recommendations were developed, we considered these 6 principles. I won't speak to each one of them, but I'll start with quality recreation. Residents in our interaction were very pleased with the quality of the services as they stand now. So this is meant to be a reminder as the base level of programs expands and the different ways of delivering the services expand through partnerships, that bar is continually raised and the highest quality is achieved. Equitable resource distribution. We heard a lot from your citizens that they would like the programs and services to be closer to them. Transportation seemed to be an issue, distance was an issue, and you'll see in the recommendation that we talk about a base level of services and define community assets that highlight more the individual districts and unique communities. And finally, I'll highlight equity. Again, staff do a great job of being inclusive. What we heard is that there's still some underserviced communities, persons with disabilities, the 2S LGBTQ plus community, the newcomers to Richmond, and your residents that reside in Bolotech. A more inclusive and comprehensive approach is outlined in the recommendations. And of course, collaboration speaks to the strength of the partnerships that need to be developed so that you can achieve all of what we'll be outlining in a few minutes. The plan itself is divided into 6 categories: active living, administration, the partnerships and community connections, the assets, leadership, and program service delivery. So, Max, you can start recommendations.
We'll go to the next, each of these sections separately. They are all laid out in a similar manner. So for each category, we've defined a set of what are the municipality's roles in this area. So for example, in active living, best and promising practices with staff, volunteer and residents, social infrastructure, opportunities for movement in active living, and policies to support movement. And so those are the 4 roles. And then what you would see are recommendations. That will need further refinement by staff and council through your business planning and budget process. But for example, this one is within the community where people live, should be a primary setting for active living interventions. And we recommend to focus on those with less access and those that are less active in general. And then another sample recommendation is that the municipality should demonstrate a commitment to active living themselves, which means organizing team building events that encourage active living and movement, flexible work days that allow people to be exercised or be active during the day, walking meetings, provide shower and locker facilities within municipal spaces, and install bike racks. If active living is the priority of the municipality needs to model that behavior for others. The second category that we identified as part of the plan was administration and accountability. So first, obviously ensuring that the recreation operations have the resources they need to deliver quality, safe, and inclusive recreation opportunities. And that will involve certainly detailed discussions at budget time and business planning time to make sure those are available. Policies and procedures that guide the delivery of services so it's consistent and best practice. We believe data collection is really important so that you can make evidence-based decisions. And we heard from lots of people that they'd like more communication. They certainly loved the newsletter and things like that, but they wanted more communication, more opportunities, many through social media. So we listed a couple of sample recommendations. One is to determine a framework that helps you decide, should the municipality do this, should it be a community organization, or should it be the private sector? And you have all three of those different groups delivering recreation. We did recommend you have a framework to help define that and ensure there's equitable and consistent pay opportunities and so on. So the next one was strong community connections, and we defined the roles as supporting community organizations to offer recreation, active living, and sports opportunities, help them coordinate their activities, maximize the effectiveness. You have many organizations, in some cases, doing the same kind of work to support themselves that they could probably do better collectively. Focus on the participation of underserved or underrepresented populations, and provide expertise in helping those community-based organizations navigate the various support networks that are out there. And as sample recommendations, we talk about cross-sectional recommendations, collaborations, partnerships, both with traditional and non-traditional, and also we've mentioned arts, cultural and tourism opportunities, as well as the Beau-Port First Nations, as all places that your citizens said that they thought was important, and those groups have all said they're interested. Broaden the participation of sport and active living with social service agencies. Again, you'll see this emphasis on who's not participating and how can we help them participate. Facilities, parks, and trails. So obviously municipalities should maintain and upgrade all components of its infrastructure, support community organizations in developing and maintaining facilities, parks, and trails, and make sure that different users groups that use the same spaces are supportive of each other and not creating either blocks between the two of them or sort of undercutting each other's operations. And so we identified a number of sample recommendations. One is the Richmond Arena, which you are already doing some work in this, but you need a new arena facility. In talking to citizens and groups, need a new ice surface, but also need program space that should accommodate meetings, programs, and social spaces, and a huge, huge demand for an indoor running track. And also, people were hoping that the HVAC system in the arena could be designed to allow both winter use, but also summer use, and obviously incorporate universal design principles for accessibility. We also listed in this area a potential recommendation of working with both yours and with the province's road teams to upgrade the shoulders of roads so they're safer for walking and cycling. Huge, huge priority. And for example, in one of our interviews, we talked to a 7-year-old who told us that they didn't feel safe riding their bike on the side of the road because of the state of the road. So again, I think you'd have to prioritize what areas to look at, but that's something that we've identified. And then further one, and Karen already touched on this, but we think you need to establish a minimum standard of infrastructure that should be available to people, including a playground, a multi-purpose space, a safe walking area, a multi-use trail, and some kind of outdoor space that would be suitable for social gathering. In leadership, we defined that volunteerism is absolutely key to the successes of recreation in your community, and so the municipality can do some support in that area. Also, programs only happen when there are qualified leaders and coaches and officials, and there are times when the programming that you're able to offer, that the community is able to offer, are based more on who they can find as a qualified coach than whether that's the best program for the community and what they're interested in. So again, we believe the municipality has a role to play in building that human infrastructure. Invest in staff so they can bring you the best and promising practices, and relationships with everybody who offers recreation. Everybody should be at the table so you can maximize what you can do. We've mentioned the sample recommendations around volunteers. We think volunteer recruitment and management practices and doing it together would be much more advantageous. We also suggest that due to the importance of trails and walking spaces, you should consider hiring a trails coordinator who could champion the implementation of trail strategy, but also help the various trails group work together and get the maximum benefit for your citizens around trail use. Finally, we also suggested, because so much happens with the community around you, you would, we think, benefit from somebody who really is focused on building those community relationships. Program service delivery. At the end of the day, if we want people to be active and we want people to participate in recreation, it has to be easy for them. It has to be inclusive, they have to see themselves in it, and so that is one of the roles of the municipality. The municipality, as we've touched on before, should be thinking about direct, indirect, and third-party service delivery. The municipality has some incredibly unique assets and nature-based opportunities. That should be a priority. And how do you connect residents and visitors with those? And obviously support for active living within all age groups. We put some sample recommendations. One of them is to develop a Learn To suite of workshops and clinics. Many people don't participate because they don't know how, and they're embarrassed if they go to try it and don't know anything. So that's a really important role for the municipality. Similar to the base level of infrastructure, we would recommend that you develop a base level of service for what people in the community can access in their area, and make sure that those are sort of the top priority. As Karen mentioned, people really like what is going on in the municipality with recreation programs. And there are some unique things that, quite frankly, many larger municipalities don't have. But we do want to make sure that everybody has the base level.
I noticed on one of your recommendations, you talked about playgrounds, no community, like kind of everybody being within 20 minutes of these types of facilities. Like, is that typical in other extremely rural municipalities such as ours, in your experience?
Depending on the nature of what the asset actually is, there's usually standards that dictate whether it's 20 minutes or 30-minute drive. Sometimes you can inch towards 40, but in terms of recreation services, even in rural areas, that is the standard. It doesn't have to be sophisticated facilities. It's more or less along the lines of what Max had presented with the playground or the walking trail, or even a tot lot, for example. But I know one of the councillors I interviewed spoke about the St. Mary's area and how there seem to be more community amenities in that area. So we would suggest, it's up to council of course, something similar for Richmond. And again, because there's a 10-year horizon on this plan, you can spread the objectives out across the different districts in different years.
And wrapping up this edition of Roundtable, here is Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette giving a rundown of activities that took place during the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Spring Conference, which was held earlier this month in Digby. Warden Mombourquette was part of a 3-person Richmond County delegation attending the conference. The others were Deputy Warden and District 5 Councillor Brent Sampson and Richmond CAO Troy McCulloch. This was a milestone NSFM Spring Conference for the Strait area as well, because it was the first spring conference hosted by NSFM President and the neighbouring Mayor of Port Hawkesbury, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. So here's Warden Mombourquette giving a rundown of the activities that took place during the NSFM Spring Conference earlier this month in Digby.
I would say a fairly well-attended event. A little over 100 folks from across the province, from municipalities across the province were there. We provided, Mayor Brenda and I did provide a presentation on this piece of, the Denmark trip, but mostly the task force itself overall. And yeah, I would say the sessions were fairly informative as well. I know I attended one on municipal code of conduct, just to hear a little bit more about that. I think, Troy, you were in that. And Brent, I don't know if there was any comments you wanted to make on it, but
I was the other one of the.
You were in the other one,
evaluating with, the CAO.
Right on.
You know, so
CAO evaluation, right? Right.
Yeah, I missed that one.
he asked, and I said, no, Troy went downstairs.
But yeah, so I think a good learning experience is always, in my mind, very helpful to be able to connect with other municipalities across the province. They did have some opportunities to, they really did a showcase in the beginning on the quality of life initiative, which I know we've had a presentation on here in the past, and the new dashboard that they're coming up with and how that may support communities in being able to leverage funds for community-based projects, et cetera, and municipalities as well. We had I think an address from the Minister John Lohr, and had some discussion on climate action projects as well. I do want to say one of the municipal success stories that was presented was on a particular recreation initiative in Kentville. And at the end of the presentation, the presenter made the point that we should all go back and thank recreation staff for the work that they do, because you leverage the heck out of things. So thank you, recreation staff. I'm going to take her advice. And it was a really, really informative session for sure. Okay. I should also mention that it finished up with a presentation on Friday morning of municipal perspectives, the challenges and opportunities faced by towns versus rural municipalities like our own versus regional municipalities, and what some of the pressures are that they experience that we don't, and vice versa. And when it comes down to discussions on things like roads and especially infrastructure related items like water, sewer, we all have different challenges that we're addressing. So I thought that was really informative as well.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable. Thank you for tuning in. And just a reminder that if you have any thoughts about what you've seen on this past episode of Roundtable, or you'd just like to make suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863. And you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your suggestions and your comments. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And our YouTube channel features every single episode of Roundtable, including this one, as well as individual segments and interviews from our programs, and the same service is offered for our sister program, Telile 24/7. And you can also see the entirety of the May 8th Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Council. All Richmond Council meetings are posted on Telile's YouTube channel. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you once again for joining me for this week's edition of Roundtable. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.